Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. Yes, time to abort. I should. Should try switching SCE to auxiliary. That's what did it last time. That's the delay. Hope everybody's doing well. It's good to be here. Still pretty bright outside. It's a little after 6. California, one of the few things they've done ever that I agree with. I think it decided this last election that they're going to ditch daylight savings time switch. So I don't know if that means that we go back to Pacific Standard and then not back out again, but that big old nasty, well, it's 7 o'clock now and then it's 10 minutes to 5 and it's pitch black. Anyway, it's good to be here, and today we have a special show. And based on viewer demand, I swear to God, that's what it is, viewer demand, although I don't know if, 2 people really is what you call a demand, but I'm going to call it a demand. Tonight we are going to do the Growing Up Bill show. Gee, Wally. And I guess we might as well just leap right into it. So the rule for the questions today was anything prior to when I became the international celebrity that I'm convinced that I am. Leave it to Bilver. That's great, big booty. Anyway, so we'll be looking at those kind of questions and seeing what comes out of it. So we'll just jump right in, why don't we? We'll do Facebook page and BillWhittle.com. We'll start with Facebook because I got it up. So let's see what we have here today. Come on now. That's not what I wanted. This is not a friendly piece of software anymore, this Facebook. All right. We'll just kind of walk our way down the list, why don't we? So Steve Young says, I'm guessing your dad was very supportive of your idea to become an astronaut. Were you encouraged to go after the dream or try to get your head out of the stars? I was not particularly encouraged to be an astronaut by my dad. I do remember being pretty well discouraged from being a theater major, however, which of course makes a lot of sense and is sound advice, which if I had taken, I'm sure we wouldn't be having this conversation now. I'd be working someplace else. He didn't like. It's like anybody else. If you have a son or a daughter and you said they told you they're going to go to college and they want to study theater, you think, well, can't you do that in your part-time while you go to college or study for a real job? And so on some level, I remember very clearly we had one acting professor who really knew his stuff there. Everybody else was just kind of a teacher, but this guy was just a great actor on top of it. His name was David Shelton, and everybody just, loved and hated him. They loved him because he was fun to be around and interesting, and hated him because he just brutal with the students, just make you cry. But he said something back in 1980, 81 or something. He said, look, if you're an actor and you're 20, that's one thing. But if you're an actor and you're 30, that's something else. So just being able to make a living either in any kind of form of entertainment, show business, is pretty impressive. I tried to do it as a writer and director and try to get movies made, but that proved beyond my fundraising capabilities. But I did do a sketch comedy show in Florida in 1993, 4 and 5, I think. And it was called Grazing, which I found on DVD. I'm going to have to hook that up and transfer it. But I learned how to edit on that show. I got the very first computer-based nonlinear editor. I want to say it was D-Vision, I think was the name of it. It might have been before that. But anyway, it had, this I do remember, the output resolution was 340 by 220, something like that. Wow. So I learned how to edit on that, and it turned out that editing was the part of the process I always liked the least, but it was the one that just paid me for 10 years, maybe more. So, yeah, I was never particularly encouraged to be an astronaut by my dad either. I guess he thought it was just a phase. But in any event, that's how that sort of broke out. By the way, and I consider this to be a major plus. My dad never ever tried to to steer me in the direction of hotel management. Never once that I just don't remember anything like that. I know sometimes people have their parents, especially their father, trying to, get them to go into the family business, but that just never happened for me. All right, I'm just going to go down the list here. I'll just see. Yeah, why not? And we'll do a couple of Facebooks. We'll go to BillWhittle.com. We'll come along. Here we go. Joshua Alessi. It's a relatively new name. Hi, Joshua. Did it start with you as a young lad going on adventure with a bunch of dwarves and a wizard to steal some treasure? No. In fact, it did not. And I was very, very late to the fantasy train. I mean, I just hated it. I thought it was just dumb. And I kind of went to see the Lord of the Rings movie in 2001, The Fellowship of the Rings, almost exactly on a dare, but I wasn't excited about it. I just like, yeah, maybe have some interesting effects. And I loved it. And then, and I liked it so much that I then went ahead and read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And that showed me that there was more to this than I thought there was. But I've never been, that kind of fantasy guy. I never played, I think I've played Dungeons & Dragons once or twice in my life. There was a Star Trek role-playing game. I played a lot of Traveller, which is a science fiction role-playing game. Played that for years and years and years with good friends of mine. And I remember there was a Star Trek role-playing game came out, and I was playing this Vulcan, obviously. And something was going to happen, or the ship was about to blow up or something, and I said I could take a shuttle or something, get the word back, or try to bring help. And from that point on, for the rest of the night, I was called the Cowardly Vulcan, and at that point, I gave up. Problem with the Star Trek role-playing, by the way, is that if you get hit once, you just turn into vapor. There's no wounding with phasers set on kill, So there was actually a luck roll, and I always thought that was kind of lame. And James T. Kirk had luck of like 99 or something like that, some incredible number. That's a good question. John Frost, how necessary is college to becoming a good writer? It's not necessary at all in terms of the writing. Whether or not it's necessary in terms of the background, it's certainly not necessary. The question is it worth it, I guess. It's certainly not necessary. There's just hundreds of thousands of great writers who never went to college. I'm trying to think what college really did for me. I ought to be able to think of something. I was there for 5 years, 7 years of college down the drain. I loved the football game, and I loved the college. I loved the experience of going to college. I loved being on campus. I loved the football games. I loved getting ready for the football games. I loved Gainesville in the fall when it was starting to get cool, and hanging out with friends, and lots of people, like 4 people sharing a 2-bedroom apartment or whatever, and just hanging out with people your age and not being at home or under adult supervision. We did a lot of really cool things. I don't know if they still do them down there. I'd be surprised if they weren't like banned. But there was a quarry where we would go, just like in Breaking Away, one of my favorite movies ever. You just go diving off of this cliff into the water. And it was, all I remember about that was that it was high enough. And I'd done some high diving ever since I was, 3 or 4, just jumping off of high boards. And I loved it. But this going off of the quarry in Gainesville, or outside of Gainesville, the only thing I remember about that was it was high enough so that you're doing that normal thing and you just feel like you're just free falling. But this was high enough so that all of a sudden there was this rush of air, this kind of, And that was fun. And the other thing we did out there, which is a little weird, creepy anyway, was we actually went spelunking. There were lots and lots of caves in Florida. The whole thing's basically like Swiss cheese, and it's underground sinkholes and stuff. And some kid had discovered this cave, and we would go down there, and you could just keep pushing back, and there was a part where you had to climb, and it was about that high and about that wide, and you had to kind of crawl through there, and you could feel your shoulders getting stuck, and that was a little dicey. So you just kind of, just, all right, so calm down, relax. But when we got back there would be 6, 7 of us would go at the same time. When I got back there, in the back, we would turn off all the lights, because no phones or anything, we all just had flashlights. And that was black. That was dark. Sorry, hang on. Let me just adjust this camera 1 second here. It was dark. It was like crazy dark. So yeah, that was it. So college did me some good in terms of the experience, in terms of just meeting people, getting a lot of different perspectives on things, and being on your own. And I came really close to being killed any number of times, it seems to me. I don't know how I made it. But I think probably the closest I ever came was we went to Crescent Beach, which is I think it's just below St. Augustine's, about a 2-hour trip. And we went out there one night, and the guy who was driving was just smashed, just crazy drunk. And you had to take these 2-lane single lane highways, because there was no freeway direct out there. And this guy was he must have been doing 80 miles an hour down these curving roads, and I just thought for sure we're not going to make it. And then we did make it, and then we slept on the beach, on Crescent Beach, because you can drive onto the beach. And I remember waking up at about 8 or 9 in the morning and being underneath some kind of a sheet or something, and unbearably hot, and just, it was just what was the worst sensation ever. I had that happen to me when I was out in the Everglades too, star parties. You'd go to sleep at 4 or 5 in the morning or something, take a little nap before you went home, and then I woke up in a VW van out in the middle of the Everglades in the middle of summer. It was about 9 or 10 in the morning. Everybody else was sleeping. It was unbearably hot and humid, and nasty. So specifically about your writing question, John, the only thing that's necessary to being a good writer, in my opinion, is courage. Really, I would say that's basically it. I grew up with excellent grammar. I went to British schools, so that was never a problem for me. And they taught it in a sensible way. We didn't. We never deconstructed sentences because we never had to. It was just easy. It was like this, like the grammatical question of Susie and me went to the movies. It's like, well, first of all, just take out the Susie, and me went to the movies, or I went to the movies. I went to the movies. Susie and I went to the movies. Pretty simple, really. So, and I've always had that kind of pretty good English language familiarity. But when I say courage, I mean it, because the essence of good writing is having the honesty to go places that are interesting to other people, and having the courage to just put it out there. They say write what you know, and that's really true. And you don't have to know everything, but if you're going to write about something, you better know an awful lot about it. And frankly, you probably shouldn't be writing it unless it's already consumed you. And if it's a subject that's consumed you already, then you should know most of it already. It's pretty much verbatim what happened with the What We Saw series. Somebody came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do a 4-hour special on stuff you already know real well and that you love?" Yes, I believe I do. But courage is the number one quality of a good writer. Because if you really are writing about anything that's worth writing about, if you're writing a fictional character, you're going to put a lot of yourself into that character, or you'll put some of yourself into this character and some into another, or maybe you'll put a lot of your brother or whatever into this character. All that's fine, but the one thing you have to do is you have to get out genuine emotion, and usually that comes from discussing things that are a little painful for you. It's easier when you're talking about another character. It's a fictional character. You can talk about whatever you want to. But you got to put the truth down there on the paper. If you don't put the truth on the paper, no one's interested. So you really need to write about the stuff that just really lights you up. I can't imagine writing about anything other than that, the stuff that I'm interested in. And like I said, I have an opportunity now. I'm working on a 10-part series for Daily Wire. And it's also something I know quite a lot about. And now I see the word screenplays here in the comment section live here at Twitch. And the comment from Eric Blake was, whenever possible, show, don't tell. It's not just whenever possible. It's never tell anything. Always show things in a screenplay. If you're interested in writing screenplays, I think anybody who would be interested in writing a screenplay would be, and who hasn't had any experience with it yet, I think you would be shocked to the core, shocked to find out how formulaic screenplays are and how important that formula is. It's one of these things it's like the Hercules, like the C-130 Hercules. It's just the perfect design, and it can't improve it. You just can't. It will not be improved upon. 737, another great example. Just can't imagine anything. We've tried everything, and the twin-engine jetliner with the engines below the wings is pretty much the best configuration. So if you're interested in writing a screenplay, you have to understand both the technical aspects of the screenplay, because it's got to be formatted in a certain way, and if it's not, no one will read it. And then you also have to get out of the habit of having your characters say, well, you remember that time I was there at the bridge and I got hit by the car and it knocked me into the pond? Yes, I remember that. Well, that sure was something. Just show it. Just, show it. And don't tell about it. If you're interested in writing screenplays, there are 2 books I can recommend. 3. I don't remember some of the authors. The first one, if you want to read them, you should read them in this order. First one's called Screenplay by Sid Field. And Screenplay is basically about the format, how the format works in terms of the indentation. And it's also basically a very clear beginning on the 3-act structure. You would be amazed. I mean, absolutely amazed. Just about every successful movie you've ever seen, the same things happen at the same time. You're 28 to 30 minutes in, this is going to happen. And then 68 to 72 minutes in, this will happen. And it happens all the time. And it's that way because it works. So I would recommend first I'd read Screenplay by Sid Field, I think. Second thing I would read is a book called How to Make a Good Script Great, which is about the power of rewriting, because scripts are not made in the writing, they're made in the rewriting. So first draft of your script, you're not building a house, you're just clearing the ground. You're just getting all the weeds out of the way and figuring out where this house is going to live. So making a good script great is very good. And then the best book I've ever read on screenwriting was called Story. And I've forgotten the name of that author as well. But that was just brilliant. I mean, and I'm glad I read that last and not first, because it came so late in my writing career that it was like really remarkable to get to it that late. But this guy was saying things like, if you have a scene where the situation is not an inverted image of the way it began when it ended, then that scene doesn't belong in your movie. In other words, if the scene doesn't completely reverse something, it doesn't belong there. I thought, my God, that's really incredible. And it's really true. Hardest part about writing, John, is having it's another side of the courage thing. And it's especially true in screenplays. Sometimes the hardest thing in writing is either Anybody can cut bad stuff out of a book or a screenplay. But when you have to cut the good stuff out, that's the hard part, is when you have to cut stuff that's just really good and have the discipline to say, this is great, this is wonderful, maybe I can use it again someday somewhere, but it's not moving the story right now. The other thing that's very hard to do, which is why it's being done so often these days in these movies, is it's a very common beginner's mistake to have your character have all the power in the world to do everything that they want to do exactly according to their plan. Most writing is a form of escape for the writer. It's a way to create an alternate reality. You know, John Hughes made 4 or 5 great movies, really great movies, that essentially was John Hughes telling the story of what would have happened if he'd gotten the girl when he was the kid, because he was always the nerdy guy. He was always the nerdy guy in Breakfast Club, and Hughes was the nerdy guy in 16 Candles and all the rest of it. And John Hughes rewrote his childhood, his teen years, his adolescence anyway, and told it the way he wanted it to come out. And because he put enough truth in there, you believed it. But this is what's the matter with so much of this social justice warrior stuff today. A very brief... not even a diversion, because this goes directly to the point, but like the original Star Wars is well written because Luke changes. Your character has to change. If they're not a different person at the end of the story than they were at the beginning, there's no point in writing it. There's not a character you can think of Schindler, for example, in Schindler's List. He starts out as just a shallow, kind of vain businessman, and he ends up being a real human being. And all characters have to change. Either they get better or they get worse. But in the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke didn't have the ability to magically do any of these things. He picked up a lightsaber and nearly cut himself in half, and he's up on the book. In the Falcon, and he's just doing it against a super easy kind of target drone thing, and he keeps getting these electric shocks, and and it's hard work. And he spends the whole second movie trying to figure out how to do this stuff, and they keep denying it. He's raising the X-Wing out of the swamp, and then he loses faith in it, and back down it goes, And because he put so much effort into it on camera, and because it was so much pain and so many reversals, you really got to like the guy. By the way, subtle thing, but if you look at it, you'll find out in the first movie, Luke is dressed in white. In the second movie, he's dressed in gray. And in the third movie, he's dressed in black. And that's not a coincidence either. It kind of mirrors what's going on inside him. But he goes from being a farm boy to being a Jedi master, a master of his emotions. And so when Luke got to be so good with the lightsaber that he didn't have to use it. That was the genius of the first trilogy. He just throws it away. This is his dad, and he's going to try and save him. And then you get to the trilogies we're enduring now, and you get these characters called Mary Sues, which are characters that have all the power to do everything all the time. And you find this Rey, who's never been in a powered spaceship before, can suddenly just sit down in the Falcon and fly better than Han Solo ever flew it. Must be the Force. And then first time she picks up a lightsaber, she defeats Kylo Ren, the master of the dark side, beats him in a lightsaber fight, never touched one before. Must be the Force. And it's the childishness of these feminist writers determined to show women doing everything just so well, just as well as men. And what it does is it completely cheapens it. You just don't give a damn. You don't care. It's much, 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 much more interesting to watch Luke Skywalker try to balance a couple of stones this big than to watch Rey come out of a cave and lift, 7,000 boulders. It's just plain cheating. You don't go through anything. It doesn't cost you anything, so you don't care. And so a real problem with fiction writing, John, is you love your characters and you want them to succeed, and you're kind of in their place. And, when I started playing Traveler for the first couple of times, I wore powered battle armor to bed because I didn't want to get, killed by whatever forces. And the referee was saying, you just can't do that. I said, well, I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it. I wore powered battle armor everywhere because you want to give them everything you can to succeed and win. you got to hurt your characters, and you got to hurt them so bad it nearly kills them. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. Anyway, hopefully that helped a little bit. Martin Archer, will you ever revisit some of the military history that Eject covered? That was when, actually, you know what? I said I do only questions before Eject, so I'm gonna skip that one. We'll try that maybe next time. Steve Young. I agree with Dave Olson. Good day, mate. What did you think of the Sheilas when you were down under? The constellations are different. What did you think of the Southern Cross? That's a great question. I was in Australia for 3 months from in the fall of 1999, 98, 99. I don't remember. I think it was 99. I was down there for 3 months, and my uncle bailed me out. I was just things were falling apart in LA, and he saw how much trouble I was in. He said, "Come on down, stay with us for a while." Okay, paid my way down there. I sent the cats to stay with my mom in Florida, and I went down to Australia, and I went out the first night I got there, and what I found to my utter amazement, to answer your question, is that I found out real early, and I never ended up changing my mind on this. I thought it would be exactly that way. I thought these Australian women would be wonderful. I didn't like them. I loved the guys. I thought that the men would be just, absolute, kind of just savages, which is what they were. And I just thought the Australian men were a blast. You have just fun, easygoing, lots of laughs. And I personally found the women to be pretty stuck up and kind of, snooty. But your mileage may vary. The thing I can remember most about Australia, and I'm going to apply this example to all of Australia. Australia is the kind of place where Kentucky Fried Chicken is made with 3 herbs and spices instead of 11 or 7 or whatever it is. It's just, it's too much like the United States to not feel like, to me, I'm talking about just the general life. I love the people. I love the country very much. I love the accents. I love the look, all of it. But to me, there were many times when it just seemed like America that had been run through the deflavorizer. It was great seeing the Southern Cross and all of these southern constellations. I love being able to look up and see Alpha Centauri. That was fantastic. And there are animals down there that do not make any sounds like the ones up here. And there's one bird at night that just it was a flying fox. Puts out, it's a bat the size of a seagull, and it just perches in the trees there. We turned a spotlight on it and it just went, ooh, it just emitted this perfect tone like coming out of a tuning fork. But I liked it very much there, but by the time the 3rd month was underway, I really wanted to get back. I felt like I was way far away from the center of the world, and I needed to get back. All right, so let's see what we can do here at Billable.com. And we'll go back and forth a little, why don't we? Let's see here. I think Scott said he was going to put up something on this. I don't see it. In fact, I don't see any of the pictures coming up at all. That's not good. Does anybody? Oh, by the way, somebody mentioned Anzac Day. Troy Stevens mentioned it in the comments, and I'm glad he did because I was there. I'm sorry, I need to log in. That's why nothing's working. I'm an idiot. And Anzac Day, I was there for Anzac Day, and everything just stops cold for, I don't know if it was a minute or 5 minutes. The whole country just stops and has silence, for all the guys they lost, and as a percentage of their population. It was, just crazy, crazy horrible. Here we go, questions for 8/22. Well, that'd be today. Let's see if anybody got the... Okay. Here we go. So we're back at BillWhittle.com now. Steve Darrow says, tell us about your family dynamic growing up, specifically with your siblings. As you've already told us about your dad, were you the middle child? Who was the brat? Who was mom's favorite? Who was your favorite? Who got in the most trouble? That sort of thing. Great question. Let's see. I meant to pull more of these. I pulled one. This is my mom. It's the way my mom looked when my dad met her. So this would be about, I want to say 2-3 years before I was born. And that's BOAC uniform there. See if I can scale this thing a little bit. There we go. She did all the commercials for BOAC. That's pretty good. And I want to say that's a Stratoliner in the background, which is basically it's basically a B-17 that turned into a passenger plane. But she was a stewardess on the last generations of piston-powered airplanes, and twice they lost engines, and twice they were going to ditch in the ocean, and twice she was, wanted accommodations for bravery and courage and stuff. They were on a flight on a BOAC Stratoliner like that one. And they were going from New York to London, and they lost an engine, and then that's why you had 4 engines. Okay. Then they lost another engine, and that was serious. And then they lost a third engine, and they couldn't hold altitude on 3 engines. They were still flying, but they couldn't hold altitude. So they start diverting to Gander, Greenland, and there was a Pan Am flight about 20 minutes ahead on that Atlantic route, and the Pan Am flight circled back, and the pilot on the BOAC flight said, outside our right wing is a Pan Am flight, and they're going to stay with us the whole way, and they said they're praying for us, and all of that. And I thought that was just so cool. So they're getting ready to ditch in the ocean, and she's trying to figure out what to do with these kids because the kids are getting scared. A couple kids traveling on the plane without without their parents on board. And she basically had the idea to go up and get them pads of paper, and told them it was very, very important that they write down everything that happens in order, detailed notes about everything that happens in order. Wow, how about that? I'm looking for pictures, and I just found one I hadn't seen, and I don't know if I've ever seen this picture. I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so what she did by doing that was she basically got the kids thinking about doing something, got their minds going and not just sitting there being afraid, and it was real smart. And then the other thing she did when they were getting ready to ditch in the ocean was she went in the back and she took a bunch of these thermos bottles, water bottles, and filled them full of either brandy or whiskey or whatever was back there. And thought that would help keep people warm out there. And when they got the engine restarted, the second one restarted, and they started heading to Gander. It looks like they were going to make it. Just before they landed, one of the stewards realized what she'd done, and I don't think she asked permission for it. And she said, "Jesus, Edith, you got to go back. How do you think it's going to look if we come out of this airplane, smelling of alcohol with booze in our things?" But anyway, yeah, I'm just kind of screwing around trying to find all these pictures from the past. Here's a picture of my mom as I remember her. This was taken during the hotel days. If it'll hang on, sorry. Let me just bail on. Yes, there we go. So this is how I remember my mom looking growing up. And she was just a fashion plate. And she grew up in Egypt. She was there during the Suez Crisis with my grandfather. They were trapped in a building when all of the Muslims started to riot, and they wanted to just kill every Englishman they could find. And my grandfather was in Royal Naval Intelligence, and he was in this kind of like a commissary sort of thing. And there's a literal mob of people on the street, and so they barricade the door, and the people are they're banging the door down to come in and take their heads off. And my grandfather called his friend at the military barracks and said, "You got to come save us." And he says, "Alf, I can't. I'm not allowed to send anybody out unless British property is being destroyed." So my grandfather starts getting a bunch of these giant, I don't know what they were, they're bathtubs or something, it was big containers of water. And he starts boiling this water, starts carting it up to the roof because he figures they're going to have to make a last stand on the roof. My mom was probably 12 or something. And he's getting ready to pour this boiling water down the stairs. And then they smashed the window to come in. And then my dad called the guy back and said, "Well, British property has now been damaged. They've smashed the commissary window." And so the British troops arrived, and if they hadn't, I wouldn't be here. So that was something. My mom always said the person that she got, who she got compared to the most was, oh my gosh, what's her name? Hang on. She always said that this was the person who's just completely got stopped for, I've forgotten her name. Hang on, I can just mention it, and then everybody will tell me, but that's no fun. What's her name? Yvonne DiCarlo. Is that right? Yes. Yvonne DiCarlo. She said she got stopped for Yvonne DiCarlo all the time, who was in the Munsters. This is Yvonne DiCarlo. You may remember her as Mrs. Munster. Let's see. I see it in the Munsters sometimes. That got to be a very popular show. Yeah, this kind of picture, I can see a similarity there. So Yvonne DiCarlo again. They look a bit alike there. Yeah, Lily Munster. Anyway, yeah, so that's my mom. I have found a picture, and just going through my photos, and I found a picture I had not seen. I mean, obviously I saw it somewhere because it's in my photos, but I do not remember seeing this before. Get some of these guys away here. Hang on a second. It's us when we were very young, and it's taken in America. Those are the things that I know. Other than that, I'm really quite shocked to see it. So hang on a second. And I'll get to that question about all the sibs and all that stuff. So this was on the desk here. Let's try this one. This is taken in the United States probably before, oh, there you go, October 62. There we go. So that's my mom on the left. My brother Steve, who's a year younger than me, and then my dad. And that's almost certainly taken at my Aunt Marty's in Pennsylvania, up in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. So we would come back and visit once a year. It was always really one of my favorite parts of the year, and come to see my Aunt Marty and Uncle Rock. But that's not really very representative of me because, to be honest with you, most of the pictures of me as a kid are on the beach. So let me just let you look at that little piece of silliness for a minute, and I'm going to see if I can find some others here. I should have probably pulled these before, but that would ruin the integrity of the show, and I just wasn't willing to do that. So, so my dad is just about to move, or had just moved to to Bermuda. So he's just starting out as the general manager of the hotel and starting to come along in his career. It's really before he got to the top of his career, but we've just left the hotel in New York. My dad worked at the Roosevelt Hotel as a food and beverage manager when I was born. And then So this would be probably about a year or two after moving to Bermuda, something like that. Yeah, I can tell you, October '62 was I was born in April of '59, so it's a little over 3 in that picture there, I guess. Um, Come on now, I'm scrolling, trying to don't want to skip past all this stuff. I just should pull all of these things into thing. But that's really, I mean, that's America, you know. I mean, that's just the world I grew up in. That's the world of cap guns and stuff. There's a picture of my dad at 17. I can't believe that I'm descended from this guy. I mean, my dad at 17 is I think maybe the best looking man I've ever seen. I mean, he's just it's unbelievable. He put on a fair amount of weight after the war, and but before he did, when he was, I mean, it's just shocking. Okay, there's some planetarium pictures. I'll get back to those, I hope. Sorry about the delay, gang. I should have just done this earlier, but there's just these pictures, just so many of them. Let's see. Come on, Billy. I've got them all in one place. I just don't know where that one place is. I'm scrolling. But anyway, that was in Pennsylvania, and my Aunt Marty had a house there right on top of Plymouth Meeting Mall up on the Germantown Pike. And here we go. Here's some stuff. So here are 2 pictures of my mom taken later. I mentioned my grandfather, who was in the Royal Navy. He was awarded the Order of the British Empire for that. Here, some of these are interesting. So this is my granddad when he was a young man. Give me a second. Here it comes. Yep. That was my granddad as a young man. And here are 2 pictures of my mom. And to be honest with you, this is how I remember my mom, because I would probably be around 6 or 7 by this point. So she was at least, 5, 6, 7 years older than the ones in the BOAC thing. But whoops, I don't know why this rotates it around like that. I've never been able to figure that out. There we go. Why did it do that? Anyway, you get the idea. Let's see if I can flip that. If I can, I don't know how, unless it's here. Nope. Maybe it'll take the next one a little better. Hang on. Here's another one, same angle. But that's what I remember, what my mom looked like. And she's still with us, although she's with us and not with us, it's just Alzheimer's and stuff. She'll be 89 in September. But she hasn't, I really haven't spoken to my mom in at least 5, 6, 7 years now. It's a weird and strange and awful thing to be able to say something like that, You haven't spoken to my mom in 7, 8 years and she's still alive. It's brutal. It's better now than it was. Watching it happen was much worse than having it happen. And my Uncle Ted, on the other hand, who's just a year younger than her, is got a mind like a steel trap. He teaches engineering, and he has all of this stuff in his head. So he exercised his memory all the time, and my mom just didn't. So, scrolling back, this is the last picture. I told you it's been a while since I'd spoken to my mom. This is the last time I spoke to my mom. I brought her from Florida out to Los Angeles for Christmas, I'll say 2013. So this was the last trip that we had together. Why is it going in upside down? I don't understand. Maybe there's just too much stuff in there. Hang on. Let's see if I take some of these guys out. And on this trip, she was, in and out of. She was mostly just forgetful at this time, but very forgetful, and couldn't remember why we were there, or stuff. And already the dementia started to happen, and that was not pleasant at all. She would be in our apartment. She'd just gotten there, and she'd get upset about something. And the next thing you know, she's got her bags packed, and she's going to walk out on the street and just walk home, which is a bit of a walk from Los Angeles. Let's see if it works a little better. Oops, hang on. So, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing. You're just plain stuck with it. It's the way it is. Let's see if this one goes in a little better. I don't understand that. I never will understand that. Oh, that didn't work either. All right. But I've got some more stuff here. So let's see. Got rid of that. So try to find these Bermuda pictures, and I don't want to lose my place here. And 10,000 pictures of me. I think there was a period between like 1980 and whenever the iPhone came out, 2005. Here we go. Now we're on the gold mine, where there might have been 5 pictures taken of me during 30 years, and then now it's just 10,000 pictures. Okay, so here you go. These are pictures from Bermuda. This is the pool at my dad's hotel. Does that go straight in? It does. I grew up here. What wrong? Hey. Hang on. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day there at the pool at the hotel. It's the Carlton Beach Hotel in Bermuda, which my dad was the general manager of. And I don't guess the cursor's coming along. You see the guy with the red hat there. Above him is that kind of dome building up on the second floor. And right underneath the seam of that dome, really pretty much those 2 doors directly above the guy's hat, was my dad's office. So I could go up there all the time, kind of soaking wet and stuff, and just kind of check on it. And he had a dictaphone, which I thought was very cool. Never seen anything like that before, or heard anything like that before. I told you there's a picture of my dad that's just simply unbelievable. I still can't believe it. I really can't. I can't believe it. But this is my dad at 17. I got hit by a cosmic ray. Something went wrong. Because that's like movie star looks. I mean, I look like a chimp compared to him. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's just unbelievable. But my God, yeah, he does look a lot like James Dean. But I want to say he was 16, 17 then, and I never saw him looking like this. He'd put on not a tremendous amount of weight when I was born, but definitely there. Here's a picture I just love coming up. Hang on, get rid of this one. This one's really fun. I love this picture. Get ready, ladies. Here it comes. Yeah. That's me on the ladder in my bitchin' leopard Speedos. That's my brother Steve in front of me, and then my brother Evan with the cup. Steve's a year younger. Evan is 5 years younger. But that's really what I look like. I mean, I had a tan as deep as, I had a 2-inch deep tan, and I was just out in the water all the time. Just a healthy kid and running around swimming. Steve was always out snorkeling, and we just had a lot of fun. Yeah, that's me standing up in the front and center there with the Dad's Hotel in the background, all the flags of the different countries and so on. That was pretty cool. This picture was taken probably, I'm just going to say it's maybe another 6-7 years after that. This was back in Bermuda, And I'll just show a couple more of these, then I'll get to the family questions that you were asking. So we'll take that one off. This is one of my favorite pictures. I just love this picture. I just do. This was when we first moved to Key Biscayne, and this is when I was playing Little League Baseball. And I remember that exact pitch. I remember the photographer standing there, and I remember that pitch. I hit a triple off that pitch. It's the biggest hit I ever got in my entire life. I just like the look. I just like the determination on that picture. And not just the determination. I just miss Little League Baseball, and I miss the world that generated Little League Baseball. I miss it very much. I just think that was really cool. So this picture would have been 50 years ago? 50. Good Lord. That's really pretty shocking, honestly. So I'm just scrolling through pictures, and I just might as well just kind of go do it that way just to show you guys. We'll just do it that way, so save us a little bit of time. So we'll say goodbye to that. That would be about 1970, I want to say, in Key Biscayne, Florida. Here's a picture of me from college days. This is about 1979, I guess. My friend Steve Stipp. And we were making my movie that I made in college called The Pigeonhole. And I was a crazy thin guy. Crazy thin. That's my friend Steve on the background there, and that's an Aeroflex 16 millimeter camera. We rented the camera for 6 days. We called it Miracle Week, and we shot 3 films in 6 days. I don't think I slept more than 3-4 hours during those 6 days total, almost. Just deliriously tired, but I liked what we got with it. The movie I did was called The Pigeonhole, and it was great. And and at least the turtleneck is gone, says Steve Darrow. He's exactly right. So I'm probably 20 in that picture, something like that. So moving on. This is one of my favorite pictures of me coming up here. I like that picture too, obviously. This one I'm just very happy with. This is me after I'd gotten my pilot's license in gliders. And, damn it. This would be 1991. I soloed on the 4th of July. That's in the Mojave Desert. That's the same flight suit of me that I have in the Long Easy. Still got it. And I was probably 33, maybe, something like that. Nice little single-seat Grobe, 102. And it's like flying in a bathtub. It's tiny, tiny. And when you're up there in an airplane like that, you just don't feel the airplane at all. It's just like there's just no airplane there. It's just you and the mountains and everything else. And I really loved it there. And I loved the snow, and I loved the fact it was cold. I mean, I never was cold growing up. So that part of it was pretty cool. And I learned to fly there, and I just had a really good time. I was one of the guys working at the field, so I hung out with the tow pilots and my flight instructor. The 3 of us shared an apartment. We'd get there in the morning, and I would launch gliders, and then I would rake rocks. I think I still do have The Pigeonhole. It was an Academy Award nominee, believe it or not, Student Academy Award nominee, that movie I made. I made it for $6,000, and it beat a film by a guy named Dave Nutter, really wonderful guy. He's been a professional director out here all his life. He's done hundreds of things. And his film cost $60,000 or something, and we beat him because it was a comedy, and everybody else was doing kind of these serious things. Here's my dad as a much older man, not too long before he died, I guess. With my sister. There we go. Time marches on, kids. Yeah, my sister's. I just adore my sister. Yes, I was an Academy Award national finalist. The Student Academy Award competition takes films from around the country, and And mine was from the southeastern United States, and I went to the finals with 3 or 4 other movies, and that's as far as I got. But I got that far, and it was a pretty clever film. It was about registering at college, and every department you went to was kind of like a cartoon image of the department. So he goes to the English department, and the guy's kind of this sort of Dickensian kind of teacher, and here we go. And so on. And my sister is terrific. I just definitely closer to her than anybody else, and I just adore her. She's in Miami. She's a stylist. She's an amazing person. She's just a great woman, my mom. Here's another picture that pretty much sums up the horrible nightmare life I had prior to moving to Florida. Unbearable. That's taken in Bermuda at the hotel. And it's my brother Steve to my left, and a guy on my right is named Jonathan Farrow. And I'm obviously missing some teeth there. But look how blonde that hair is. That kind of tan, and that blonde hair is killer. It was really great. Here's another one from the same day, I'm sure. This is a little weird. I like this picture a lot. Let me take this other one off. This is us at the hotel, and the guy behind us there is, his name was Uncle Bob. And Uncle Bob was the recreation director at the hotel. So Uncle Bob was responsible for making sure that people always had fun things to do. And Uncle Bob was just a little bit creepy. I do like that picture. I like that pose. It's, now that I look at it, never really noticed it before. It's pretty nearly my, it's not real far from this. Yeah, definitely see the resemblance there. I like that look. I really do. I think there's just something cool about it. I just kind of like a lot of confidence there, I guess. So that was Bermuda. Let's see what else we got. Well, it should just be pretty easy to go through this one time and put it together. Now I got to tell you, there's a guy who was really kind of like my foster dad, because my dad was a hotel manager. Didn't get to see much of him, we kind of grew apart as we got older. But the guy who was pushing me on the dolly, my friend Steve Stipp, his father, Jerry Stipp, is the guy I talked about an awful lot in the early days of the show. He was the guy who quit his job teaching at $21,000 a year, family of 4 kids and 2 adults, so 6. And he started Beta Analytic, and he just took a risk and went out there, and Beta Analytic does 94% of the world's carbon-14 dating. I worked for him for many years. He became a multimillionaire, moved to Arizona. He was really, in many ways, really was my father in a lot of ways. And as his health declined over the years, his heart was failing, and there was some talk about him getting a valve replacement, and they were going to use like a valve from a pig's heart or something. And the thing about Jerry was I used to just bust his chops all the time. Every time I wrote to him, I always wrote to him as if he was Sauron. I mean, this is way before The Lord of the Rings. I would just always write to him as, it was just like he's just, like he was just the Lord of Evil. But I remember he was talking about maybe getting a pig's heart valve put in. And I wrote him back and I said, look, why don't we just cut out the middleman here? Why don't we just save some time? Just stop messing around with putting all those pieces in there, and let's just, I hate doing that, damn it. Let's just cut to the chase, Jerry. All right. I'm just going to leave that there. I don't care anymore. There we go. He was a great guy, really a great guy. And I love to do these kind of things with him. Let's just, why waste time constantly taking parts out of pigs for the next 10, 15, 20 years? Just get it over with. I miss him very, very, very much. I miss him very much. He was a really, really good man and saved my bacon many, many times. Many, many, many times he saved my bacon, that guy. Old Jerry, he's a good man. I used to think that this was my favorite picture of me for the longest time. This was taken when I was a student, theater student, and I think it was my headshot from, so that'd be 40 years ago now. But I love this picture. Anyway, here it comes. Notice the Vulcan ears. Trying to catch that pose. I always thought I was a goofy looking guy. I really did. I felt good about myself when I was in Bermuda, but by the time I got to be a teenager, I was 6'1", 119 pounds. I was really, really thin, and I just thought I was kind of goofy looking. Looking back on it, I wasn't nearly as goofy looking as I thought I was. And if I'd had anything like the confidence I had today, I would have done things a lot differently back then. But anyway, a few years before that was taken, this is my high school graduation photo. There you go. That's not a bad picture. Although the hair. This hair that you have here, this magnificent hair that you've all become so accustomed to looking at and causes so much pleasure to so many people, is not possible in Florida. It's just not possible. You just can't have it. It's just too much humidity and all the rest of that stuff. But other than that, and it's on that print. What was the name of that company? There's like a company, something that did it's like they did every single high school picture in the world. Was it Bryn Allen? Is that the name of it? They just like, it was just a factory. You'd go down to the mall or whatever, and you just stand there, and then they'd snap the picture, and off you went, and craziness. Oh, boy. Yeah, I might as well. I was talking earlier. Yeah, it was like it's Sears, that kind of thing. I was debating whether to show you this next one, but I might as well. In between the Little League baseball years and going to college and years, in fact, prior to graduating high school, I was working at the Miami Planetarium, and I had a flair for the Olin Mills, that's it. Flair for the dramatic. My friend Phil sent me this, I think. That's when I did my special console wizard thing. Like covered in blue paint and a wig, and they brought me in on a dolly on a throne, and was playing pinball wizard on the sound system, and just nuts. But this is my nephew. He's a good deal older now, by the way. But this is a good kid. This is my brother Steve's son. I'll show you a picture or two of Ashton. He's a great kid. Great kid. My brother Steve's pride and joy. This kid just absolutely loves him. My brother, to his undying credit, he was married 3 times, and when Ashton was born, he just got up every day at 5 o'clock. He had to be at work at 7. He had to get up early enough, get the kid fed and washed. Did it all by himself, 100% working full time, and I just admire that so much. I really do. And he turned out to be just a great kid. He's not just cute kid, he's just smart as hell, and there's something about this kid. He's never had He's never had a bad day. I never saw him angry or upset or anything. He was always just a happy, happy, happy kid. And I just really just worship the guy. I think he's a neat, neat kid. I haven't seen him for several years now, and I'm looking forward to getting him back again. Let's see here. Scrolling. This one coming up is, I'm sure I showed this relatively recently. This one is the planetarium days. So that's me on the left, scrawny creature. The guy looking at the camera in the triple knit polyester pants is Doug Gagan, the best console operator I ever saw, although I do think I gave him a run for the money. Phil Trick is watching this either now live or recorded. He can be the final vote. The guy in the glasses in the center looking sideways is Phil Trick, who is just such an important part of my life. I've talked about him so many times, just gave me my entire moral compass. And everything else too. Really got me through my teen years. I don't know how I would have done it without him. I really don't. So here's a picture of me in Bermuda, and I am wearing my Warwick Academy tie. That's me in British schools. And it's not a really great clear picture. Here's the three kids. There's four of us. My sister Melanie was not born yet. She came, or if she was born, she was an infant. But that's on the stairs of my dad's hotel. I remember that staircase so well. I remember that location so well. It's me in the middle. I'm sorry, me on the left, Steve in the middle, and Evan on the right. And that's what it's like being the manager's son. We were just down there 3-4 nights a week, and it was just great. I don't know if I mentioned, I'm sure I've told this next story before. I'll tell it again, because I didn't actually realize I had a picture of it until not too long ago. So take a look at this. Now, there's a great story behind this picture. Not a great story, a tragic story, really. So there I am, junior Cub Scout in Bermuda. It's probably the last year or two before we moved back to Florida. And that's me in the center. Steve is to my left. Evan is in civilian clothes down below. I am holding my Pinewood Derby car. Evan is holding Steve's Pinewood Derby car. Steve is holding the first place Pinewood Derby trophy. And the look on my face is the look of somebody who just watched their balloon fly off into the air. I had put so much work into my car. I put so much work into it. I made it aerodynamic. I sanded it. I primed it. I painted it. I just put decals on it. I just put hours and hours and hours and hours into it. My brother Steve just took the red pine block, painted it red, and stuck the wheels on there, and he won, because aerodynamic drag is absolutely non-existent at 7 or 12 miles an hour or whatever the Pinewood Derby does. So he just had his car had the most mass. That's why it won. Pinewood Derby, where scouts are made and destroyed. We had to build those cars. You get a kit, which consists of a block of I guess it was balsa, and then 4 wheels and some kind of carbon lubrication. What was that? And you could do whatever you wanted to the cars, and they'd put them on a ramp, and then they'd drop this sort of thing, and they'd just race them, and they'd finally race off. Anyway, I put so much work into that car, and Steve put none into his, and he got the trophy and I didn't, and that's at least an hour after the event, and you can see that I am still in a state of shock. That's the look on my face when I missed the Apollo 17 launch. That's exactly how I looked. Kind of, what? And that's our house back there, and that car is a Vickers Vauxhall, and the license plate is P4248. And our telephone number in Bermuda was 23902, and then they changed the code, and it became 80239. I don't know how I remember these things. I remember when I was living on Key Biscayne, my phone number was 305-361-1933. Here's one you don't see every day. I don't mean among me. I just mean among kids. It's not very common anymore. It gives you an idea of where so much of my, patriotism and stuff comes from. This was me at Christmas with my brother Steve. And yeah, my dad was an Army guy, but somehow he managed to be okay with me in the Marine dress uniform. So that's Steve dressed as a Mountie. He didn't know what that uniform meant. I had a pretty good idea about the Marine Corps. My uncle Rock was a Marine. I do remember the globe and anchor on that hat. I remember that so well. I remember that belt too. And I just, the idea today that I should just, there we go. Why didn't I do this earlier? The idea that, you just don't see kids wearing Marine Corps uniforms anymore. And it's a shame because it really does instill a kind of a fundamental patriotism in you. And I don't know. I always felt this way about the country, always. I just, it's just what I grew up with. I got a G.I. Joe right around that time. And that was Army. That made my dad a little happier. Then I got one with the Marine camouflage, and that made him a little less happy. So I think I've just hit the gold mine here, where most of our pictures are. So I'm just going to run these, and then we'll get to some new questions here. Let's see, which ones have I not seen? This one is obviously 4 or 5 years later than the one of me on the stairs earlier, but we used to love to get our pictures taken there. So that's the same staircase as me in the background, Steve in front of me, Melanie on the rock, and Evan there. And I guess we went down and had our pictures taken once a year, something like that. It was a magical life, and I never got over it. I never did. I never took it for granted. I just loved it. Loved it. It was, who gets that kind of life? Who gets to grow up in a hotel? Here's a picture from the hotel, probably around the same time. And that's on the putting green out back. This is how I remember my mom and dad, to be honest with you. Seriously, this is how I remember them. That's me, and Steve's in the front. But that's actually how I will always remember my mom and dad. Just these elegant creatures just gliding around, and yeah, and the hotel at nighttime was lit up with colored lights, and every time I see colored lights on a building, I go right back to being 5 or whatever age I was then. My mom was also kind of a real big fashion plate, and so that meant we were fashion plates. So it'd be, I think that's, I don't know. Here's a picture. It looks like it's from Christmas. That hotel is not still around. The hotel was sold, became Wyndham, Bermuda. It was Carlton Beach, then Sonesta Beach, then Wyndham. Was there for the longest time. I wanted to go back and see it so much, and then it was deserted for like 3 or 4 years. Deserted, and I thought, oh my God, deserted! I know every single nook and cranny of this hotel. I got to get back there. I'm gonna have so much fun just running around in there. I'll just sneak past the barbed wire or whatever and chicken wire and get in there. And by the time I checked on it last, it had been bulldozed out, and the whole peninsula that it's based on it's just empty now. I don't know. I still don't think there's anything on there. But you can see here I am being infected by the toxic masculinity of America's gun culture. Yes, it's a gun with had a scope attachment and a silencer attachment, all the things that make life worth living. Let's see. we're running out of stuff here, fortunately, because it's probably getting a little old, but let's see if we can find anything else. This was fun days. It's back in the early days of the super secret meeting of the group of Hollywood conservatives. So this would be about 10 years ago now. But that's Bruce Boxleitner, John Voight, me, and Gary Sinise. And those were just tremendous days. And I found myself in like a picture like this, and I'm as amazed as anybody else. I couldn't believe I was there. I was really just like, Bill, just shut up, don't say anything. I'm surrounded by these kind of these legends, and Bruce Boxleitner is one of my favorite people. Really, really, really like him very much. He's a great guy. Very, very fond of him. Let's see. Oh, here's a picture from, I want to say about 10 years ago, of these known troublemakers. Yeah, look at those rascals. That was I think at that's gotta have been CPAC. Are you watching, Scotty? I think that was CPAC 2009. That's the first time I ever met Steve or Scott, and we just sat down and grabbed each other for breakfast and decided, hey, it would be fun to do a show on this new PJTV thing. What are you saying? He said, sure. So that's what we did. Oh God, there's some really, really, really strange stuff here. It's not a great picture or anything, but this is from about 7-8 years ago. I don't know her name. I don't remember her name. The one I just put up, I like only because the guy in the picture is Armie Hammer, and Armie Hammer is one of the nicest people you could ever meet. And he's an actual, honest-to-God movie star. And I think that woman's name is Gigi or Netta. But this would be back around 7 years ago, something back when the organization was really moving. And Armie Hammer is just, he couldn't be a nicer guy. He played the Lone Ranger and has been in Man from U.N.C.L.E. and a bunch of things. And he's just a super, 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 super cool guy. And I know his wife well too. And they're just wonderful. All right, I got a couple more. Let's see. This is me immediately after the picture of me on the camera. I want to say this is 2 years. No, this is before I went to college. This would be the year before I went to college. We were making movies in Miami. Oh, God, this is embarrassing. Yeah, that's my hippie face, my hippie liberal face. It's just, I just want to, looking at the picture, I want to shave. I mean, it's been 40 years and I want to shave that nastiness off. It's just horrible, horrible. And this is our group when we were making movies in high school. And this was the group of us that were making films back then. We called ourselves Free Whip because it was Fritz, who's my best friend, front and center there. Lee, who's in the middle back. Whittle, which is me on the far right-hand corner, if you can believe it. I must have weighed 120 pounds there. And then Steve Stipp, who's got his arms crossed. Yeah, wow. But we had a lot of fun. We really did. And learned how to make movies there, too. Really just learned how to do it. It's amazing how you can read all the books you want to, but until you get out there and make mistakes and stuff and find out what you don't have, you never really learn until you do it. I like this picture very much. I'm not going to go through every picture I have. All right, I'm going to show you this. I've shown it once or twice before. It's just, you want to talk about courage. Well, this one's not the one. I'll save that one for later. There's one more picture of me and John Voight with my mom. That's a couple years before my mom's last trip out here, and she was much, much better off then. she really had a good time that night, and that was at the Reagan Library. And yeah, that's probably the last time. This picture was the last time I saw my mom, when my mom was like all the way there. So I'm really glad she got a chance to do it. I got a chance to speak that night, which was great. So that was very cool. Here's the picture that I always hesitate to show, just because it's just, this is how I felt I looked. This is how I felt I look all the time. And in fact, I felt like I looked like this until I turned 50 or 48 or something. This would be my junior year picture. My God, that is just sad. Come on. That really is. It's like Lord God, King of the geeks. Although I must say, looking back on it, I don't have the same kind of burning hatred that I had for it before. But that's definitely me. Had those big round teeth, and my buddies at the planetarium used to call me Termite. They're better now. Termite. I hated it at the time. I think really, looking back on it, I think it's very cool now. I think that's it. Just checking almost at the end of the scroll here and see if I missed anything. Oh, yeah, there's one picture I wanted to show. This is one of my favorite guys in the world. This is Mike Schlitz. Now, I said all this was going to be post-eject, but I'm going to make an exception in this case. I was on a jet, and I was flying Mike Schlitz to the first event for the Veterans Airlift Command. Mike is an Army Ranger. He was leading his patrol back. He was a sergeant, leading his patrol back on a trip through Baghdad, and he was going to be in the up armored truck, but he had some new guys, so he put the new guys in the up armored truck, and he took a regular unarmored Humvee, and they drove over 120 millimeter or 122 millimeter. Two of them fused together, improvised explosive device, and it was fueled with liquid propane. And Mike went sailing through the air about 200 feet, and he sits up, and he can see the Humvee is burning. And so he gets up to run to his guys, and what Mike didn't realize, because he was so focused on his men, he didn't realize that he was completely coated in liquid propane, and he was just a little torch, just a little Schlitz torch. And he was running back to his guys, and he got there, and the two or three other guys in the Humvee were all killed. And then he passed out. Mike was in a medically induced coma for 6 weeks, something like that. You can't really get a very good look at it here, but his ears were both burned off. His nose was burned off. His eyelids are burned off, and his lips were burned off. And his head looked like a bowling ball covered in scar tissue. And I remember when I first got into this plane and I first started looking at him, I remember the only thought I can remember about this moment, and it was very clear. I'll just go back to me for this just for a second, was that I remember when I was sitting there with Mike, I just remember thinking, look him in the eye and keep looking him in the eye. Don't avert your eyes, just look at the guy. So I got to be friends with Mike, and when Mike woke up out of the coma, needless to say, he pretty much didn't want to live anymore. Both of his hands were burned off, so you can see he's got 2 artificial arms there. And he was really ready to give up. But then his unit was going to be rotated back to the States, and he decided he wanted to be there when his Ranger unit came home. So that gave him something to live for. And Veterans Airlift Command is run by a really great guy named Walt Fricke, and he basically takes private jets and things and flies veterans anywhere they want to go, wounded vets, anywhere they want to go. They want to go to Disney World? Great. They want to bring their families in from wherever they are? Great. And there's 3,000 pilots, and everybody's lining up waiting for a mission. So we were taking Mike to a fundraiser. It's the first time I met him. And Mike wanted to see his unit come back. So he He had something to live for. So came time for his unit to rotate back from Iraq, and and they tried to get him to the Air Force Base, but he couldn't sit in any of these jets. He couldn't fly commercial. He couldn't sit in one of these airplanes. He was in his bed, and he couldn't really get out of it. And it was a big, heavy medical bed because there's all this life support stuff on it. It wasn't like it was a cot or a stretcher or anything. So Veterans Airlift Command found a Pilatus, which has a cargo door. And the people who worked at the FBO, the people who fueled the guy's airplane, came in on a weekend and built a ramp on their own time. Built a wooden ramp to wheel him up into the cargo side of this single-engine turboprop Pilatus. And then on the other end, at the Air Force Base, they had built, his unit had built another ramp. And when they landed, and it was time to get Mike out of the plane, it was snowing and a little bit of rain, and he couldn't get, he had no skin. I mean, he had no epidermis. So he couldn't get wet, and he got cold very easily. So when it came time to get him out of his plane, his entire unit gathered around him and formed like a moving umbrella. And they basically linked arms over him and kept him warm and dry, and they wheeled him in there. And when he got in there, the crowd went crazy, and he got needless to say, a standing ovation. And since then, he's been an advocate. Now, the great thing about Mike, and this is the only way to treat people like this, I think, and that is to give them a ration of crap. You can't treat them, you cannot treat people like this with kid gloves. I did a fundraiser with him many years later, and I said, some of you may be tempted to feel sorry for Mike, but that's not Mike Schlitz. Mike Schlitz is a ass-kicking Army Ranger, and he will kick your ass, kick my ass too, because that guy's still in there. But Mike, this was before, I don't know how many surgeries he's had by this point, probably 60. But he has had another 20 or 30 since then. His nose has been utterly reconstructed. To give you an idea of the difference between why I'm so hard on Hollywood and why I'm so worshipful of people in the military, is this reason here. Mike looked like this. Somebody from the movie casting business heard about his story, called him, asked him if he wanted to be in a movie about Iraq. He said yes. And he went and got his nose reconstructed out of skin that was growing. They grew some skin on him somewhere, some of his own skin, cut it off, made a nose out of it. He showed up on the movie set, and they started yelling at him because they wanted him to look like this. They wanted a guy who, looked like he was a bomb victim. They didn't want a guy who was, recovering and had a nose and everything. I hear that story. I just want to firebomb Hollywood. I just want to. It's one thing to have to think that, but just to say that to a guy, what kind of person are you? Who could say such a thing to this guy? So Mike went through a bunch of reconstructive surgeries, and I heard he was in town once, this be several years ago, and he was they were having dinner at a hotel, at a restaurant in Beverly Hills, and I went down to see him, and I walked in the door, and I'm looking around for him, and I can't find him, and I realize his back's to the door, but guy had a nose, and ears, and everything. And sat down, and I said, Mike, you grew your ears back. He said, yep, I just got fitted with them, prosthetic ears. And I said, just out of curiosity, why did you pick 6-year-old girl ear, Mike's? Couldn't have picked a man's ear? This ear looks like the kind of ear you'd see on a cartoon princess. And he laughed. He said, he'd been without ears for years. And he said when he went to test fit the prosthetic ears, he said normal size ears he said it just looked like Dumbo. I just couldn't believe that they belonged on my head. So he eventually got a couple of different sets. He's got 2 hooks for arms, motorized hooks. And one of these times we were together, probably that night, I said, hey man, you going to be at this thing or not? And he says, I don't know. Maybe I can find somebody to read my palm. And that's the attitude that just makes everything I do and makes everything this country is about, makes it work. And I just couldn't be prouder of the guy. I really just admire him enormously. he's he's a real, honest to God hero, and he's my hero, and I don't know how he does it, but I sure am glad he did. He's just a good man, and I'm proud to be on the same team as him. My dad, I know I'm going all over the place, just kind of taking the pictures in the order that I found them. My dad was the manager of the Sonesta Beach Hotel. We actually went to Bermuda, then we went to Florida, then we went back to Bermuda, then came back to Florida. I usually don't get into that because it's too messy. But when we went back to Bermuda for about 7-8 months, my dad opened up the Southampton Princess Hotel, which is here. So this was the second hotel, and you know, I mean, I'm not trying to brag. I'm as completely blown away by it as anyone else, but that's how I grew up. You know, I grew up on those beaches. Let's see, it's almost impossible to believe, but that's it. That's how I grew up. Here's the hotel. This is a hotel I really grew up in. This is the first hotel. Yeah, you can tell the difference between the one behind it, which is you know, looks like 4K digital camera, and this one is Ektachrome or something. But the hotel on the left was the one that is just still the one in my heart, and it's just nothing but a big old grassy peninsula now. Just a couple more to go. Then we'll go back to questions here. I can tell you a little bit about the whole family relationship thing. Yeah, these are all cool. It's my dad. Second lieutenant, United States Army. He got to Germany in April of '45. He got there about a week before the war ended. He was an intelligence officer, and he told me very, very late in his life that he was one of the guys who was there for the Nuremberg trials, and he was standing underneath the scaffolds with a stopwatch. He was 22 or 23 years old, and they dropped the rope on, they executed, I don't know, 30 or 40 of these guys, the worst of them. And he would just sit there and go tick, 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 and wait until, you know, stop moving. Then the doctor would go in and check for the heartbeat, and that's the kind of job that you got when you were 20 back in those days. A little different today. He's a serious-looking guy, though. That's the kind of guy that won the war. This is my family. Me in the background, brother Steve, Evan, and Melanie. Just dressed up. You know, when you're the manager's son, you got to be down there a bunch, and so we were at the hotel quite a bit, and we'd have parties at the house, and we would go around and serve like hors d'oeuvres and things like that. And we were just part of the team. One of my all-time favorite pictures ever. That's my dad at his hotel in Bermuda with Jonathan Winters. And Jonathan Winters was a regular guest, and I remember seeing him, and even then being impressed by just the kind of faces he was making. I didn't know much about him, but I just love that picture. Just love it. And yeah. So here's another one from the hotel. And this is probably the most meta picture of us. I guess this is all of us. I think it's the only one we've seen that's all of us. So that's the fams. For those of you that were asking, that's me behind my mom. My mom with my sister Melanie on her knee, and Steve between my dad and my mom, and Evan on the other side. So that's the childhood. Is there anything here that absolutely positively has to be shown? I don't think so. Last, almost last, second last. Mm, mm, mm. I don't think so. Oh, just for fun. This is a picture of me with Michael T. Williams, Kelty Williams. He's the guy who played Bubba in Forrest Gump. Although you wouldn't know it to see him. The whole thing, no prosthetics, nothing. He just stuck his lip out and did it. And that was cool. That was very cool. Checking, almost done. Oh, hey, hang on. Got a couple more. Got a whole section here. And then I sort of I'll get back to the questions. But I guess that's kind of what it's all about. So I have this picture. It's the only picture of my family that I actually have. It's on my desk in my home office. These are my four favorite people in the world back then, and there's only one of them still with us, and she's barely still with us. So that's my dad and my mom, my Aunt Marty, and my Uncle Rock. And I just absolutely loved Marty and Rock, and I loved all of their kids. They were the cousins that we hang out with, so they would come once a year down to the hotel in Bermuda and hang out for 2 weeks. Then we'd go back and visit them in Pennsylvania for 2 weeks. Marty was a championship swimmer. Rock was Uncle Rock. It doesn't get any better than that. I pity people that don't have an uncle named Rock. Uncle Rock was a Marine artillery spotter in the back of airplanes, and that's how I remember Mom and Dad and Marty and Rock, and it's just great. There's another picture I love very much, very much. This is my dad on a business trip to New York. So, so my dad grew up in Pennsylvania, so he's used to snow. It's not like snow is a big surprise to him. And he, nevertheless, when he became the manager of that hotel in Bermuda, he took it real seriously. And so this is him on a business trip into New York, probably around 1966 or so, somewhere in that general ballpark. And I just love it. I love it. It's him on a sales trip, and it reminds me of actually a really great story. See you later, Marty and Rock. I'll see you soon, I guess. It's not real soon, but eventually. So here's my dad in New York City, and he's on a sales trip. Yeah, there you go. And he's wearing the Bermuda shorts, and he's wearing the Bermuda blazer that's the crest of Bermuda on the jacket. So here's a story that my mom, she only told me reluctantly. She never said a bad word about my dad to me that I'm ever aware of, but she said it was one of these business trips. They were in New York. And that's, practically positive that's the plaza in the background. So one of those windows just up out of frame was where I watched the moon landing. And so my dad used to do this. It's kind of affected, but he liked it. I thought it was cool. So it's the national dress of Bermuda. It's the official dress of Bermuda. So my mom tells this story. My mom and my dad go out to a restaurant, real nice restaurant. I forget what it was, 21 Club, something like that. And they stop him at the door. You couldn't get into a restaurant without a jacket and tie back then. He's dressed exactly like this in this picture. They stop him at the door. He says, "Why are you stopping me?" And they said, "Well, I'm sorry, sir. We don't allow shorts in here." He says, "This is the national uniform of the country that I work in. This is the official dress of the country that I work in. I'm sorry, sir. We just can't do it." And he argued with them and argued with them and argued with them, and then he got so angry. My wife is the only person who really understands this is Natasha, because of the part when I get to, and then he got so angry. That's something my beautiful wife can certainly relate to. So here's what my dad did. He got so angry. This is obviously way before the internet. He got so angry that he kind of stormed out of the front of the restaurant, grabbed my mom by the arm, got a cab, and drove around New York City for something like 2.5, 3 hours. And what he was looking for, without any kind of an aid or anything, but he was ready to pay some insane amount of money, like 100, 200 bucks, huge money back then. What he drove around New York City trying to find a Scotsman in a kilt, because if he could find a Scotsman in a kilt, he was going to take that Scotsman back to the restaurant, stay out of the way on the corner, let that guy go in with the kilt, and then he would have had his victory. Then he would have been able to just come in and just aha. He's a bit of a nut, my dad. Like this picture a lot too. Just another beach picture, but I just like it. That's my childhood. For those of you who want to know, I was out on the beach every day, every single day. That's me munching on a hot dog surrounded by my bitches. And that's my brother Steve there. Something's going on off camera, but I'm not busy looking. I'm looking my own way as usual. Yeah, that was sitting on a beach eating hot dogs, and he never did find a Scotsman, by the way. My mom said it was unbearable. It was an unbearable 3 hours. My mom and Natasha would have a lot to talk about because I get that way. Yeah, I know I'm not going to show all these pictures. Showing every picture I have. I don't care. This is what this show's about. Here's a picture that's actually very, very cool. Right around the same time. Come on. Okay, so I got to tell you the story behind this. So I started scuba diving when I was probably 6 or 7, something like that. But this is helmet diving. So, so here's the thing. There was a guy who had a helmet diving concession. You can see these helmets are homemade. He basically just took 4 panes of glass and just basically welded them together, put them under a steel thing, ran a hose up to them, and then they're heavy. And so you're basically in this self-contained little bubble of air. And we weren't very deep. We were maybe 10, 12 feet, but we're feeding all of the sergeant major fishes and stuff like that. And the best part about it was this guy used to love, you can see my shoulders are so narrow, it's practically slipping down, it's almost around my waist. But it was great. We weren't very deep. And honestly, I've been diving quite a lot when I was a kid. And I, to this day, have never had a better underwater experience than that. It's just amazing. It's just an amazing experience. You're in there, you're absolutely dry, your head's dry, and all of these fish just running around right outside your nose there. Anyway, the reason this was great was because the guy who had the concession would come down to the hotel once a week, and he'd come to the hotel once a week and try to drum up business. He'd have like a little movie show and stuff, and we were in the movies. And then, towards the end of it or whatever, he'd say, "And now I'd like to bring a couple of our regular customers up. Billy and Stevie, you want to come up here?" And we'd be sitting there drinking our Shirley Temples, and having a great time. This little pin spot above the tables in the cocktail lounge, and we'd go up on the stage, and the guy would say, "So, Billy, did you have a good time?" "Oh, it was great." And we were, 4 or 5 years old, 5 or 6. And his basic point was, these guys can do it. It's completely safe. As far as I'm concerned, we were experimental test monkeys and unpaid at that, but nevertheless, the beat goes on. Here's a picture of me. Taken by a guy named Andy Hollebeck. You can see the wingtip on the right. It's taken from a twin-engine Globe. I'm flying that airplane. I remember that day. That was the day I talked about. I've talked about that day many times when I was flying between the cloud layers and the sunset over the Pacific, and I was like, oh my God, I can die now. I've done this. But I like that picture because it gives you an idea of just how small that thing is and how alone you are. In a good way and in kind of a scary way. I mean, those things would just get into a lift and you just go up like you're riding an elevator. Let's see. All right. Here's 80s Bill. I like this picture. This was actually from a contact sheet, so this is going to not be a very big picture. But I'll blow it up enough for us to be able to decode it. Come on. Yeah. I love this picture. It's probably my favorite picture of me, honestly. It was taken in the 80s. Yeah, could never tell, huh? So that'd be 30 years ago, something like that. 87, 88, 89. And it had these huge shoulder pads, double-breasted, had a pair of black pants with a zipper that ran down the outside of the leg. I had a white satin shirt, and I had a white, shiny white silk tie, and just out of frame below that was some Japanese characters, and I don't know what they meant. They probably meant, this guy's an idiot. But that was me when I was working in my nightclub days, and I actually had a lot of fun working in a nightclub. I did that for 3-4 years, maybe. Yeah, that was fun. I had a really good time. I was doing the light show, and I was up there in the DJ booth with the DJ, and it was the hottest club in Miami, and we didn't even open the doors till 10:30, 11. Nobody, if you were in there before midnight, you just forget it. We'd start to get going right around 12:30, and certainly by 1:45 we'd be in full on thing, and then we'd go till 5 or 6 in the morning every day. I loved it. I really did. I loved it. Here's the last picture of me at the beach, but it's a really good picture. This is a friend, not really a close friend either, named Jonathan Farrow. All I remember about Jonathan Farrow is that I knew his father, and then his father got into a real bad car accident, and he became he was essentially almost like a vegetable after that. I just remember seeing a big scar on his head, and he didn't talk or laugh anymore. But that's the hotel, that's the bay, that's me, and that's my universe. That's the world that I grew up in. And I got one last one here. Yep, it was an amazing life, and I can't begin to tell you how lucky I am, and how constantly aware of how lucky I am. But of all the pictures I've got, I think this one's probably my favorite. I think. I'm married to this person. If you'd asked a guy who was around 10 years ago this would ever happen, he would have, I would have just laughed at you. And that cat, by the way, is named Masyanya, and Natasha and that cat were together for 22 years. And that cat is very, very special. It's a very, very special girl, and I miss her, and Natasha misses her terribly, and yeah. So I think that's about it. That's certainly going to do it for now anyway. Oh, hold on. Last one. Sorry, honey. I'll keep yours up there. Here is, I met one of these guys just a couple of days ago. This is from the first speaking event I ever did. I want to say it was 2003 or 4. And I did it in a coffee shop in Pasadena. And I was doing eject. And I had some people, some agent came to me and said, you should be doing this live. And I thought, there's no way I can speak live in front of people. How will I know what to say? But we went to a coffee shop in Pasadena, and I just talked for hours, and it turned out okay. So yeah, I got one more. This is the last one more. Russ. Oh, Russ is watching. Russ, I didn't know you were there. Russ was there. I spoke to Russ on the phone. Is that you with the goatee, Russ? we wait now for the delay, but there's somebody watching the show live who was actually there, and I spoke to him on the phone just a couple days ago. Yeah. So this, I'm just going to end on this one because it's kind of a happy picture. My mom, just my grandfather in the Royal Navy, and all of that stuff. But this picture was from 2005. We were on the ferry out to Catalina, and I love this picture. My mom was fully here for this trip, and she's normally just very friendly, and got such a big smile on her face. But that's like the Royal Navy Whittles there. That's my mom looks like Nelson, and I'm just like in the back, like almost like photobombing the picture. So we went to Catalina Island and we had a great time. So things happen and people get sick and people get older, and that's the way it goes. But anyway, that's that. So thanks for the little walk down memory lane. We'll take a couple more questions, at least a couple more. It's already 8 o'clock, but people said they want. I'm so dumb. I think I will leave that up. I'm just gonna leave that there because I like looking at it. Hang on. God, so I just got to get them organized. Hang on there. It just occurred to me to do one more of the one mores. Almost there. It's worth showing. It's worth finding. I just love it so much. Yep. Natasha came out to visit for 10 days, and I proposed to her on day 9, and this is when she came out on the trip before she went home to move out here permanently. But I just took this picture in my studio. I just adore it. I was like, okay, I'm done. Wow. That's my girl. Hey, baby. I'm a very, very lucky guy. And I got to tell you, too, I've been through a lot of crap as well. So we can talk about that some more. Maybe we'll do part 2 next week and kind of talk some more about some of the other stuff, because it was nothing. There's a lot of rough times in there, and I just kind of showed you the highlight of pretty much the highlights of the life, but there were some pretty low lights too. So where are we? Okay. Back to questions. We'll do a few more questions. Thanks for staying with me there for that hour tour or whatever. So back to Steve's question, just to answer it, because I never did. I just talked for an hour and a half. Tell us about your family dynamic growing up, specifically with your siblings. Were you the middle child? Who was the brat? Who was mom's favorite? Who was your favorite? Who got in the most trouble? That sort of thing. I was the oldest, and I still am, I might point out, which has really given me kind of that Boy Scout first son. I think I remember reading in I mentioned in the Apollo 11 thing. I remember that they said about all of the Mercury 7 astronauts, they're all either only child or eldest son. And most of them were eldest son in big families. So there's something about that. The family dynamics really do matter a lot. So I was always kind of the straight shooter because, I got all the discipline and all the attention and all the rest of it. My brother Steve, who's a year younger than me, was one of 2 middle children, and Steve was always the one getting into trouble on purpose most of the time. It couldn't be more different. I would be working in the Miami Planetarium in air-conditioned comfort. I'm so pale, I'm practically blue, and and I'm going out to the Everglades at nighttime for star parties, and my brother Steve at 14 or 15. This is how parents were back then. My brother Steve, and that's how society was back then. He would take his dog, a shotgun, and some food, and go out into the Everglades for 2 or 3 days. And Mom said, just let me know you're coming back on Sunday night. He just went out there with a tent, just went out into the middle of the Everglades with his dog and his shotgun, and just stayed out there. I was so impressed by that, really, really impressed by that. But that was not really me. Evan played football when he was in high school, and I think a little bit in college. And my sister Melanie, I'm closest to of the bunch. I see a fair amount of Steve. I used to see him more often than I do now. He moved away, and then he moved back to Florida, I think. But my sister is the one I'm closest to, just emotionally. And my sister is the soldier. She's just been there for Mom the whole time, and she's just been amazing, absolutely amazing. So let's see. Tim Turner on the website says, Beach Boys or Four Seasons? Is this a trick question? Beach Boys. Stones or Beatles? Stones. Corvette or T-Bird? Please, Corvette. Slinky or hula hoop? Slinky. Chemistry or biology? Chemistry. Favorite female character in fiction and movies besides Ripley? Oh, man, you got me. Isn't that strange? I'll tell you the first thing that entered head was Lilu from Fifth Element. I just thought that was a really good piece of work. Favorite male character in fiction and movies? Big fan of Dave Bowman. Dave Bowman, who's in the center picture back there, Dave Bowman was Neil Armstrong. I mean, it was done before the moon landing, but Dave Bowman is just the clean-cut American guy. I just really liked him. I liked Keir Dullea very much. I thought he was a great actor, and nothing really happened with him after that. But man, I just thought he was great. Probably my favorite character in terms of character is would have been Bill Paxton in Aliens. I can't believe he died in his, he was 60 maybe, or early 60s, some kind of complication or something with surgery. Bill Paxton in Aliens was the best performance I ever saw in terms of like breaking out. He had, I don't know how many lines he had. He probably had, 15 lines in the whole movie. He just stole the movie, ran away with it. I loved him. I thought he was great. All right, let's see. Here's one from Friday on the website. You said you were a mess when you were young and suffered bouts of depression and anxiety. True. Although after the Bermuda days, once I really got into high school. What steps did you take to gain control of your life and become a successful businessman? Well, I'm not a successful businessman, but we'll continue on. Role model to a group of scalawags and layabouts and miscreants and other forms of moss analogy. Well, that's the question, isn't it? I'm not running away from it. I'm just trying to think about the best way to answer this. What did I do? The first thing I did was just hit bottom. It comes a point when you just can't take anymore. And for those of us who've been through this kind of mess, we talk sometimes about having a low bottom or a high bottom, and I was lucky I had a high bottom, which means that when things hurt so bad for me I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided to do something about it. It was well before I was underneath an overpass with a needle in my arm. But many of the people who I spent a year or two with, hi, how are you? We're good, thank you very much. No, thanks. Good night. But some of the people I know who I spent some time with who really meant a lot to me were in that shape. They were really that far gone. I had a roommate for a year there when I was in Narcotics Anonymous, and I was the only person, this is the truth, I was the only person in Narcotics Anonymous who didn't have a narcotics problem. But I did have an addictive personality problem. There's no question about that. And that, I guess I just escaped through, science fiction, fantasy. I slept a lot. And my dad at an early age just pounded the don't do drugs into me from such a young age. Just I always felt like I'd never come back from that road. But yeah, I just emotionally just got more and more unstable. I remember very clearly in college, I would be at a restaurant with a bunch of other actors, and we'll all be having a fine time. And somebody would say something, and it wasn't even about me; it was just something, and like the whole thing, just the whole personality collapsed. Natasha sees this every now and then. It just it takes all of 20 seconds, and I just turn into ice. I just completely freeze. I don't freeze physically, but emotionally, just shut down, and I just I just become this kind of absolutely silent thing, and people start saying, "What's the matter with you?" It's like nothing. I'm going to go home now. What do you mean you're going home? We just got here. Yeah, no, it's all right. I just feel like I should go home. All right, well, I'll drive you home. No, you don't have to drive me home. I'm going to walk. It's Bill. It's 3 miles. It's 11:30 at night. No, I'll just walk. So I would walk. So there was obviously there's a fair amount of chemical instability there, but I didn't know it at the time. So I've been trying to make movies ever since I lost the Air Force Academy. I was 17 years old. That shook me up real hard, real hard. So that was 1976, between my junior and senior years in high school, and then I made movies that year, which kept me alive. My friend Fritz, who's a year older than me, had already gone to the University of Florida, was majoring in theater. Came up to visit him for a while, and for like 2-3 days, and I said, you can actually, this is school? Yeah, this is school. In fact, you can get financial aid to go to school like this. So I went up to Gainesville and hung out with actors, and and I just really felt awful. I'd had real bad acne when I was a kid, and the worst of it was for me. See, Bermuda gave me so many advantages, and you just saw all of them. But oh, thank you very much. I'm sorry, just somebody Taurus Vint. I'm sorry, I can't. Vision's not what it used to be, but that's very kind. Somebody just wrote something very nice there. Anyway, I just the benefits of Bermuda was I went to this incredible all boys school, and the disadvantages of Bermuda was I went to this incredible all boys school. When I came to American schools in 5th grade, I was 2 grades ahead of them in terms of what I knew, and I was at least 2 or 3 grades behind them in social skills, because it was a boys' school, and we wore uniforms, and all of a sudden I find myself in school, and everybody's dressing different every day, and it really was rough. So anyway, I got up to college, and I would just have these emotional collapses. Just, it's hard to explain. It is exactly like watching a house of cards coming down, though. I mean, you'd be just fine, and then pow. So that's pretty obviously bipolar, I would guess. And I have to think most of that was chemical, honestly. But it was before Prozac, so I had no way of knowing. Anyway, I decided I was going to try and make movies, and this is the most absolute certain recipe for the destruction of your life that has ever been invented, is trying to get money together for a low-budget film. It's just horrible. You wait and wait and wait and wait, and people who keep putting you off, and you get older, you realize from once you've had enough of heartbreak, you learn that they were never serious in the first place. But when you're young and desperate, you don't know that. So I just spent a couple of years just like waiting for lawyers to write prospectus and things like that. It was just terrible. Finally, my friend from high school found some money, and I wrote a script. It was the worst script I ever wrote in my life by a wide margin. We went out and shot most of it, and then the money fell through, and the producer was a coke addict, and I'm surrounded by the flaming wreckage of this feature film, which I still have nightmares to this day about, just like this unfinished wreckage of a movie that is just, can I put together? I must have had this dream 2-3 nights ago. I didn't even think about it until just now. But it's like, I've got to find a way to save this thing. You can't save it. It's just useless. I hadn't realized until this exact second that I still have nightmares about that. That really messed me up. Anyway, I was just met these actresses and actors in the movies, and I just was, zero self confidence. And shortly after that, on November 7th of 1985, I woke up. I just woke up crying. I just woke up crying. I just couldn't stop, and called my mom. She was working at a counseling center, and I think if she finally heard me, so she said, "Okay, hang on," and called me back 10 minutes later and said, "Come on in and see this woman, Shatsi Kasal, who was a behavioral therapist." And I walked in there kind of dressed up, and we got to be friends after several years. And then she told me later when we got to be friends that when I first walked in, she thought I was a vampire. I was just dressed in black. I was so pale, it was practically blue. And she asked me what the problem was, and I said, "I don't know. Everything's the problem. She said, I want you to go to this meeting." Or, "What kind of meeting?" It's a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I remember clearly saying, "Look, I'd be willing to bet you the only problem in the world that I don't have is a drug or drink problem." She goes, "No, it's okay. You should just go." So I've told this story many times. I'm not going to go through that again right now. But anyway, I went. My friend Suzanne Donzella made me go, thank God. And that's when I ran into all of these people in Narcotics Anonymous who had the exact same problem I did, except I was just finding a different medication, just escaping to my imagination and stuff. And so Narcotics Anonymous and the therapy was useful in addressing some of the behaviors that you get into and the consequences of those behaviors. You really just have to construct your personality. And, these pictures that I showed are so, it just looks so idyllic. But the fact is, I never really felt like I had parents. I never really felt that sense of security. Most people with good parents are able to deal with setbacks and stuff because they've had people there to protect them and make sure they don't hit the ground. I never had that sense. And so you have to go back and kind of learn how to parent yourself. When I say I never had that sense, it's not quite true. I got into some real financial trouble with the IRS in 2011. And I flew out to Arizona and talked to Jerry Stipp, the guy who I did that kind of pig Photoshop for. And I basically told him about the problem. He said, "Okay, well, we'll take care of it. We'll figure it out." And I remember thinking, this is what it's like to have parents. I was probably 52. That was definitely the experience. It wasn't like, yeehaw. It was just like, oh, now I know. Now I know what it's like to have people catch you before you hit the ground. Anyway, I got to American public schools late, and I was way behind socially. And most of the people I was in school with had known each other, boys and girls, since elementary school. And I hadn't, just before I left Bermuda in 72, I went to a party where there were girls there, and I was just lost, absolutely lost. And as time went by, I got further behind on that boat. But there was that day. It was November 7th, 1985. I just decided I can't take this anymore. And I made a phone call, and I started going to this therapy thing. I started going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings once a day. I went at least 9 months without missing a day. And many times I go twice, and on the holidays I go 3 times a day. Holidays are very bad for addicts, very bad. And up until the time I got married, holidays were just like a terror for me. And I mean, we're talking 3, 4, 5 years ago. It just, oh God, here it comes again. Here comes Christmas. That's changed. So I was doing that, and just white knuckling it. That's the only term for it. Just toughing it out. I have been so far down and so lonely and been in such dark places, mentally and physically, and just wondering how the hell I got here, and how the hell I was going to get out of here. And I have been there were many years, and again, I'm talking about now we're talking about time since this is even like 5 years ago or less. I just thought I am the loneliest person on planet Earth. I just talk to my cats. That's it. And and it just got miserable. I got famous. That helped, but that was much later. What really helped was the behavioral therapy twice a week, Narcotics Anonymous every day, because Narcotics Anonymous put me around people who were exactly like me, and who cared about me, and really did care about me. And if you're suffering from that kind of thing, loneliness or depression or whatever the case may be, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I thought they'd be nothing but a bunch of blank-eyed drug addicts and stoners. They were the most interesting and the funniest people I ever met. But that was something I could do every day, and that's something to look forward to. The meeting took 2 hours, and then we go out for 2 hours after that. That got me through the night, So that worked. And then in 1993, I was still in Florida. It was the last time I worked at the Miami Planetarium. They were relaunching a show called Child of the Universe, which I'd run 20 years earlier. So they hired me back to do that, and I got a call from Shotzi. This is 1993 now. I was 85 when I first met her. And she'd always tell me, there's no magic pill you can take for this. There's no magic pill. There's no shortcut. You're just going to have to either go through it or not. I mean, that's pretty much your choices. And, we're here to help you, but we can't do it for you. Shotzi gave me some very quick advice that made an enormous difference, and little things that made an enormous difference. I was dressing in like black and dark colors. She said, try to dress a little brighter. So I wore I found like colors like this, like a bright red shirt and white pants, and this is Miami, so you could get away with it. And, and like a yellow belt, and she said, get some sun. And I got some sun, and honest to God, just the suntan and dressing in different colors just was enormous. Plus I put on, I don't know, went from probably 125 to 135, 140, which is still pretty thin, but not concentration camp thin, which was most of my adolescence. Turned sideways and become invisible. And anyway, so in 1993, she gave me a call and said, remember how I told you this whole time that there's no magic pill for this? I said, I do. She said, well, it turns out I may have been wrong about that. And I said, oh, really? She said, yeah, come on in, I want to talk to you. So I went in, and she handed me one of these little drug starter kits, the kind of samples that the doctors give out for this medication called Prozac. And I'll never forget it. The box had like a series of like pastel-colored lines like this, and at the bottom there's a big disturbance, and every single layer up is a little bit less, till finally on the top it was nice and smooth. I thought that's pretty much it. The Prozac was the first of the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Basically, they increase your level of serotonin by decreasing your brain's ability to take it out of your system. And serotonin is a mood buffer, and it has a lot to do with mood. And I was easily 2 quarts low on serotonin. So some little thing would happen to me, and I would just go completely off the deep end both ways, either over the moon happy or in the absolute gutter, destroyed. And swinging back and forth like a lunatic, because I was a lunatic. I was completely nuts, absolutely nuts. And a lot of that was due to the chemical imbalance. So you take Prozac, and it normally takes about 3-4 days to come up into your system fully. Manic depressive, yeah, I suppose that's pretty fair. Bipolar, I think, is usually what they call it. But just, see, it's like people talk about bipolar and manic depressive and stuff. These terms they're accurate, but it's not really, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like you're like a pendulum. And you're like a pendulum. Whoever you are watching this, you could be the most well-adjusted person in the world. And you're like a pendulum. And something bad hits you, and it moves you to sad. And then normal people come back to this. And I would do that too. But when the same exact thing hit me, instead of it going like this, I would go, wah, 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 wah. It's like the oscillation rate was just insane. Little things would just be end of the world for me. So anyway, like I said, 3 days, usually 3, 4 days for Prozac to really come on online. But I took some in the afternoon in 1993. I don't remember when it was. I think it was in March. Went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and I said, "So this is what it's like. This is what being normal is like." I just overwhelming difference. Just like, oh, 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 I see. Okay, well, so you find yourself now with an enormous aid. The medications, and it's just an indescribable aid. But you're still stuck with the wreckage of 30 years of being a lunatic, and not only is there the wreckage of your finances are wrecked, your relationships, you don't have any relationships, you barely have your best friends, but you do have your best friends, and if I didn't, I'd be dead by now, long time ago. If it weren't for Steve and Fritz, they really got me through, and Suzanne. But mostly the wreckage consists of behaviors and beliefs, like mental habits, but mostly just beliefs that you've just taken to be true. I remember clear as day, like it was yesterday. It was 1980 or 81. I was in a friend's car. We were at the corner of 13th Street and right down there by Beatty Towers. We were stopped at a light. And I don't know why we were in a convertible. It was his dad's convertible, something. I was there with a friend of mine, and I was sitting in the right seat. He was sitting in the left seat. And this car pulled up next to us, and inside this car were these two really cute girls. And the light changed, and one of them whistled, and I turned to Josh, and I said, I think that was for me. He said, yeah, I think it was for you, too. I was just shocked, stunned. And so, you start changing your behavior, and basically what it consists of is just plain hard work. And the hard work is very simple. You've been doing something one way your entire life. It's your automatic impulse to want to go back to that place. When things go wrong, you go back to that destructive place. You live there your entire life. You don't want to be there, but you know it. It's not pleasant, but it's kind of comfortable in a way. It's like it's misery, but I'm used to this misery. And then you start trying to change, and you do well for a while, and you're feeling great, and you're in a pink cloud, and then you kind of collapse again, and you feel bad, like it's never going to change, ever going to change. It's going to be the same thing again and again and again. I'm going to make the same mistakes again and again and again. I'm broken. I can't do it. It doesn't matter how much I try to change. I can't change. I'm a victim of these emotional chains that I'm in. But very slowly, and I mean over years and years, you start to change, and then you start picking up new information. And new evidence is the word. Evidence is a much better word. Like that situation with the girls in the car. That was evidence that I wasn't as goofy looking as I thought I was. And then you feel a little bit better, and you feel a little bit better, and you get more evidence. And then you just kind of hold on to these things because you've been believing one thing your whole life. And finally, you start to see evidence of stuff that maybe people do like you. Maybe I was going to a rehearsal for one of the two plays I was in. I played Tony Kirby. So I was the male romantic lead in You Can't Take It With You. I went because the actress I knew wanted a partner to read with, and I got the role, and she didn't because there were 25 women turned out and 2 men. So I got the romantic lead. That alone amazed me. But I was in the car, I was heading out to a rehearsal, and we were leaving acting class, and this actress leaned in the car and said something like to the person driving, said, "You take care of that face there, And I just said, "What? You're talking to me?" She was talking to the other person, talking about me. And you just kind of hang on to these things, and then you start feeling a little better. And you start feeling a little better, and then you start to feel like, okay, it might be a little bit easier for me now to make these changes in my life because I've got a little bit of evidence that maybe some of the stuff that I took as gospel maybe it's not true. And then you start to get on an upward spiral. And then things can happen pretty fast. They happen real fast for me, real fast, because of eject, because of you guys. I was just miserable. Life would pass me by. And I wrote this blog, and people responded to it, and I'd get these comments in the comment section, and it made me a new person. It made me into the kind of person I always wanted to be, the kind of person I'm getting closer to be. And then I did the videos, and then along comes FOA, which is kind of defunct now, so we can talk about it a bit. Next thing you know, I'm in a restaurant, and Gary Sinise asked me to come in because I could put down some intellectual artillery. And I swear to God, I'm not dropping names. I found myself in a room, and I'm sitting at a table, and I don't know, 7 or 8 of us or something. It's me, Andrew Breitbart, Bruce Boxleitner was there, Robert Duvall, John Malkovich, Tom Selleck, Gary Sinise, John Voight, and me. And, wow. It's just, I just don't tell anybody, Breitbart and I actually both had that same experience. Neither one of us could believe we were there because we were surrounded by legends. T-Dog Lie says, Malkovich, I was at a party at Patty Heaton's house when this whole thing started, right when it started, 2007. I came in at first week of December 2007. And a few months later, I found myself in Beverly Hills. This is exactly how it happened. I was invited to this relatively small party because I could do what I do, and I was good at it, and even movie stars thought I was good at it. And I found myself at this party, and Gary Sinise was hosting a party. He'd started the Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago with John Malkovich and a bunch of other actors. And he was kind of introducing John to the club. And I went outside, mostly just to clear my head, and it was cold. Cold by LA standards, but by LA standards it was cold, and I wasn't dressed. It was probably in the 40s or maybe even the high 30s. And I was standing outside here, just getting some fresh air, trying not to faint at the fact that I'm in this party. And I turned to my left, and there's John Malkovich come out to light a cigarette. John frickin' Malkovich. This is exactly true. Exactly like this, burned into my brain. I'll never forget it. And I just trying to be, you don't want to be obsequious, and you don't want to be familiar either. So, John, how are you? Because we've been introduced to her. Oh, I'm good, Bill, good. And then he said, now, is it Bill Whittle or Bill Little? I said, it's Bill Whittle. He said, I thought so. Yeah, I've read a lot of your stuff. I really love it. There, a lot of times I wanted to make a comment, but I just kind of thought no. But it was just really, really good stuff, and I've enjoyed many of them. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Really? That's not what I said. I just said like, oh, well, thanks, John. It's nice. I was going to leave a comment. If I'd seen the comment by John Malkovich in Eject, I would have been 100% positive it was a joke that somebody was playing on me. That kind of thing is good for your ego. And when you, and I think it's probably time to close the show with this, but here's the funny thing. It's not funny when you think about it. It makes perfect sense. The more insecure you are and the more afraid you are, the more determined you are to show everybody how smart you are and how powerful you are. And I spent a period of my life walking around with a big neon sign around my neck that said film director. I couldn't go to a 7-Eleven without talking about how I was working on this movie or that movie. I see that all the time here in Los Angeles, all the time, and I see it from other people too. And having been there, I know it's just this kind of arrogance and arrogance, pride. Not good pride, not quiet pride, just kind of, vanity pride. And it's weird because sometimes the more hollow you feel, the more you have to prove it. I nearly lost all my friends. I was a monster for a while. I was just a monster. Really was. Honestly, I was just a arrogant, nasty show off, and I was just. I don't know how they stayed with me, but they did. I guess they probably knew deep down that I wasn't really that guy. I was just having to say those things. But anyway, I was just a beast. And so when things started to go much better for me, with Eject, and then PJTV, and then I started doing videos and speaking events, which meant that I started getting recognized. I had been through 20 years of just raw misery. I didn't have 4 figures in the bank. I didn't have more than hundreds of dollars in the bank until I was 48. 48 or 49. I remember it's the first time I'm going, I have consistently had a 4-figure bank balance now. That's a long time to be really pretty poor and short of money and all of the stuff that entails, and all of that nightmare and the amount of brain power it sucks out of you and happiness it sucks out of you, worried about money all the time for 30 years. It's not good. And so I just got kicked in the teeth, a lot by life. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I went to one of the first speaking events I ever went to. I probably told the story once or twice before. But I went to one of the first speaking events I'd ever been to in my life as a speaker. And it wasn't a huge crowd. And let's just say it was Wisconsin. It feels like it was Wisconsin, although I don't remember where it was exactly. And afterwards, there's a Q&A period. And after it was over, these people came down. And one guy came down, he was a pretty fat guy, and he was wearing coveralls, the denim coveralls. And I remember this thought going through my head, thinking, wow, I wish I was on the other team. If I was on the other team, the people that would be coming down here would be movie stars and all of that stuff. And the second I had that thought, I just was like, what's the matter with you? I just looked at this guy, and he had a real country look to him, real country sound to him. And I just right then on the spot, I remember thinking, this guy knows more about hundreds of things than I do. Hundreds of things he knows more about than I do. He's an expert in certain things in his life. It may not be, commedia dell'arte, but it might just be dairy farming. But he knows more about it than I do, and you better not ever have that attitude again. And I didn't, and it's kind of like I don't know. I remember consciously making it clear to myself that I was never, ever, ever gonna go down that road again. Never. That I would be the last person out of the room. In any event I was on, I'd be the last person out of the room. And that's what I've done. I've done hundreds of speaking events. And there's only once that I got shot out of there after it was over, and that was because they had to get me to an airplane. It was the last plane out for the night. But I am the last person out of the room. I'll talk to people for an hour, 2 hours afterwards, and I love it. And I learn a lot of stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit annoying, but almost always I just love it. And I run into people who are strata loungers, or people who've been members, or people who were back in the eject days, and it's like meeting old friends, And it's not like a false modesty. It's just a real sense that there's nothing I'm doing that's particularly extraordinary. I didn't invent any of this stuff. I'm not a painter of America. I don't invent things. I'm just a photographer. Just take pictures and put things together. And it has never been a problem, ever. I've been picked up at the airport in stretch limousines, which I drove for years. I don't like stretch limousines. But I've been picked up by, the back of Lincoln Town Cars, which is nice. And I've also been picked up much more often by people in a 7-year-old pickup truck with the front seats just covered in dog hair and the dog sitting right next to it. And, and it smells like wet dog. And that's more often than the town car. And, I actually like that. I just think it's great. I've never ever had anybody ask me, "Do you mind if we do pictures?" Or something. Take every picture there is to take. I love taking pictures. I love talking to people at the end of the show. But I never ever forget it. I never forget that they're the people who make all of this possible, which is why I always close the show the same way as I'm going to close it right this second. This show is made possible by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. If it weren't for the couple of thousand people who've been signed up for this, no one would know who I am. There never would have been an Apollo special. There never would have been any of that stuff. And I certainly wouldn't be living in this beautiful rented house in Sherman Oaks with my astonishingly beautiful wife, who's much more beautiful on the inside than she is on the outside. And that whole life is made possible by, people that are watching now. And I never forget it. I never forget it. I don't think I've ever signed off the show without saying that. And if I did, it was because it's just because something happened. But and because I never forget it, and because I never forget to be grateful ever, I'm just enormously happy. I love doing the speaking events. I love meeting people. I was MC of an event a couple nights ago, big event, not in terms of numbers, but 300 people. And it was just real smooth up there. And, I've never had stage fright. I've never been worried, never been afraid of, except for the first time I went to that cafe with Russell there. That time I was genuinely nervous. But beyond that, I just sit there calmly and I don't know what's going to come out. I've got notes. I don't know what I'm going to say. But I do know that whatever it is that I do is not going to desert me when I need it, because it doesn't belong to me. It's not me and it's not mine, and I'm not even renting it. I just go out there, and the first line is mine. First line of everything I do is "Hi, everybody." That's the first thing I say at every speaking event, everything I ever do, ever. I get the "Hi, everybody" out, and then for the rest of the time, I'm just a conduit. I suspect there's something metaphysical to it, although I'm not going to give it to you in metaphysical terms. I don't know what it is. I just know that I get up there, and all of the stuff that I put into my head, and all of the pain that went into my head, and all that stuff comes out. And all of the language stuff, and it just comes out nicely sometimes. And that's why I'm so anxious to see video of speaking events that I've done, because I kind of want to know what I said, and I want to know how I said it. It's not hypnosis or anything, but it is definitely flow. Just, it's just, I was more comfortable speaking in front of hundreds or thousands of people than I was being by myself at a party. I'm orders of magnitude more comfortable doing that. So, but basically, I'm really kind of a shy person. Natasha will tell you it's been hard on her, because I generally don't like going out to loud places, or my nightclub days are behind me. And I love doing the speaking events. I love doing work-related trips, but just going out to clubs and stuff, I just get, I can do 2 hours, 3 hours, and after 3 hours, I got to get out of there. And that's not really fair to her at all, and I feel bad about that. But I really am just kind of fundamentally shy. And the nice thing about being Orson Bean had a word for this. Did I mention this last week or 2 weeks ago? Maybe not. Orson Bean was on that interview show I did back in 13, was it? 14? And he said something I really liked. He said, I wouldn't call myself famous. He said, I'm fame-ish. And everybody laughed and said, well, what do you mean? He said, I'm famous. I'm not famous. People don't stop me all over the place and say, oh my God, look, it's Orson Bean. But, you know, I get invited to nice parties and I do this and I have a nice, comfortable living and I get enough recognition and praise for me to be constantly grateful and all the rest of it. So I'm famous. And that's kind of how I feel. And being famous is great. I'd love to tell you that it wasn't. It's not. It's wonderful. It's wonderful being famous. And the reason it's wonderful is because if you're a very shy person, being famous handles all of your introductions for you. People come up and say hi, and I would never go up and say hi to them because I'm just basically, I've never been that guy. I'm always the guy at the party. If I don't go with somebody, I'm in the corner. I sit there for an hour, and then I decide it's time for me to go. But being famous it's a nice introduction, and we never get tired of it. We had a speaking event I mentioned on Sunday night. I was MC of, and I had my Apollo blue suit, which I liked a lot. So I don't fit into the old suits anymore. I picked up 10 or 15 pounds. I can't shake it. I really want to. Anyway, the Apollo suit was great, but I had meant to get the pants hemmed, and I didn't. The pants are 5 inches too long. So I just talked with Natasha. You want to wear jeans and a blazer? It's like, yeah, it's kind of a fancy event. So we went to Macy's, just down the street from us, and we were late. I mean, I told them I would be there at 4:30, but they wanted me there at 5, so I aimed for 4:30, and we got to Macy's at like 3:45. So I was late, and we needed help from a saleswoman because I had to buy a suit real fast, and we went up to this woman, and she was helping this gentleman. His 30s maybe, something like that. And, we said, I'm so sorry to bother you. It's just we're in a tremendous time crush here. Do you think we could borrow you for just 1 second? And the woman kind of thinking about it, and the guy who she was helping said, absolutely. You definitely should take care of Bill Whittle first. Like, what? Natasha and I just looked at each other, and I just immediately just shook his hand and just said, thank you, wow, thank you. That's so kind. Comes out of nowhere, just out of nowhere, just out of nowhere. I remember the first time it came out of nowhere, I was at a hockey game. I was at a Kings game, and somebody turned around and kept looking at me, and I looked back at him, and I was, are you Bill Whittle? I said, yeah. What a life. Anyway, I had a lot of fun tonight. I really did. And for the two of you that may have been interested in this background, I hope it was fun for you. Phil, if you're watching, I owe my life to you, man. I really do. And a number of other people who aren't watching. But one of them who is watching is my beautiful wife, and she's watching right now. And the second I hang up this conversation, I'm heading home. So special shout to those two people who are so important to me, and especially to everybody else. Strata Loungers are just been great. People come up to me, and it's like I've known him forever. When that guy said my name, I just shook his hand. I asked him who he was and how, I just wanted to find out about, thank you. So anyway, there's still pride that needs to be beaten out of me, and I'm still taking my lumps for this. The NRA thing was a big lesson in vanity and the price you pay for it. But I'm a better person than I was then, and that's mostly due to that Russian girl. When I say mostly, I mean exclusively. All right, so that'll do it. Thank you again to the members at BillWhittle.com, to all the Strata Loungers out there, but especially to the people who part with some money every month, keep the lights on here and give me the life that I've had. And I've got a 10-part series. It's about the Cold War, and that's taken a lot of time, but I think that's going to be excellent. I really think it's going to be good. I got a lot of good feelings about it. And I have to get to work on that too. All right, so that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. Thanks again for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to talk to everybody. And if you're one of those people out there who are feeling sad and lonely, you can get out of it. It's not easy, but you can do it. And if you need help with that, you just contact me at info@billwhittle.com, and I'll get that email probably Monday. But I mean it. If you don't want to talk about it in the comments section here, or if you're watching it on YouTube or whatever, and any of this stuff means anything to you, just let me know at info@billwhittle.com, and we'll talk. Because the people who help me, I can't help them, but I pay it forward. Anyway, thanks for joining us. It's been a great night, a lot of fun, and thanks for the very kind words about the FAMs. And we'll see you next week right here on the Stratosphere Lounge. Where's my cocaine and the Ukrainian hooker? You said they'd be here an hour ago. You're fired.